Good. All right, Rabbi, say good morning, a good Chodesh. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning share to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Adar, Haba'alim L'Tova, Mel and Karen Ram for dedicating all of the Shiurim and Droshos. This month, this last month of Shvat, really, first day of Adar, still the last, calendrical last day of Shvat. Mel and Karen, Le'ili Nishmas, Mel's father, Mordechai ben Yitzchak, Zichron Levrach, our day of learning sponsors. Even Mark Geiler on the occasion of the 50th yard site of Mark's Zeda. Wow. David Fischel ben Tzvi Aryeh, may his neshama have an aliyah. Incredible. Daf Yomi sponsor for today, Gabi and Shana Cohn and Josh Strimber for the yard site of their father, Avi Strimber, Avram ben Kamen Eliezer Halevi. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the neshamas have an aliyah, the families in Nechama and Halavai, we should be Zochei Meretz Hashem to a true month of Mishenichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. But with that, let us begin. Today's daf is Lamed Zayin. We are picking up 37. We are picking up Meretz Hashem on Lamed Vav Amud Beis. Where did we leave off? The beginning of Menachos, right? Thank you. The sign V'Shamarta Zachuka. Good, excellent. Okay, so we'll say that is 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 lines down from the top of the Amud 36b. So we'll say, just to reorient ourselves a little bit, we are actually in the midst of a riveting machlokes here that has to do with the time of tefillin. I don't know, obviously, everyone agrees that tefillin is put on by day. The obligation is by day. The shaila is there a mitzvah of tefillin at night? And by extension, what is the nature of the mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos? As we're going to see in just a moment, all of these discussions are completely intertwined. So the Gemara says, you shall go ahead and uphold or keep this statute in its appointed time from day to day or from days to days. So the Gemara says, what does this mean? Yamim v'lo leilos. So first of all, the Gemara is understanding that this is a reference to the mitzvah of tefillin. So what do we learn from this? Number one, Yamim. This mitzvah of tefillin is by day, v'lo leilos, and not at night. Not at night. Miyamim v'lo kol yamim. Furthermore, miyamim means some days, not all days. So two very important halachic extrapolations from this pasuk. Number one, yamim, only by day, not at night. Number two, miyamim, certain days and not all days. What does this come to exclude? So obviously the days not nights comes to exclude nights. By the way, just to understand, what's the issue with tefillin at night? What is the potential issue? So obviously the potential issue is a concern that you're going to fall asleep. And again, remember what we saw, we're going to see this again today, what tefillin requires more than anything is consistent awareness and attentiveness. Since, as we've seen about, so now you appreciate it so differently, we also begin to understand why, there's a concept in halacha not to speak mundane matters when you're wearing your tefillin. Right? You should, that when you're wearing your tefillin, you're supposed to have a certain level of spiritual awareness, which makes sense. Since at the end of the day, I'm literally wearing the name of God, there should be a sense of attentiveness. Therefore, we understand you wouldn't want to wear tefillin at night because halacha l'maisa, again, there could be a lapse of awareness. What about miyamim v'lo kol yamim? Which days does it come to exclude? Prat l'shabbos yamim tovim divrei Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi holds that again, it's in mera. Miyamim means some days, not all days. Which days are being excluded? Shabbos and Yom Tov. So I will say, very important drasha Rabbi Yossi. You don't wear tefillin at night, and you don't wear tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Good. That's Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi Galili. Thank you. Rabbi Kiva says, Lo ne'amar chukazu ela Pesach bilvad. So interestingly enough, Rabbi Kiva says, first of all, this pasuk is not talking about tefillin. This pasuk is actually talking about Karban Pesach, and teaching us that not only was there a historical obligation of Karban Pesach, but there is a future obligation of Karban Pesach as well. Nafkale meha, so the Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva Omer lo ne'emar chukazu ela lepesach bilvad. Rashi points out over here, Ase Pesach Mishana Lashana. Torah is telling me, do Karban Pesach and observe the Yom Tov of Pesach from year to year. So the Gemara says, Nafkale Mehecha de Nafkale Rabbi Akiva, Desanya, Rabbi Akiva Omer. So Rabbi Akiva is a different drasha. First wide line, Rabbi Akiva Omer, Yochal Yaniach Adam Tefillin B'Shavas As Yamim Tovim. You might have thought that a person should put on Tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Talmud Lomar V'Haya Lachos. Al yadcha u'letotafos bein einecha. So the pasuk says it shall be a sign on your hand, and a totafos, also a sign or compartments on between your eyes. So what do you see from here? Rabbi Akiva says, Mishat tzrichanos. When do you put on tefillin? Tefillin is a recognizable reminder of the covenantal relationship between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael. That's what tefillin is. We literally, we wear the name of God upon us as a reminder of this ongoing relationship. When do you wear tefillin? On a day that requires a sign. Yatsu Shabbos Yom Tovim Shein Gufan Os. This comes to exclude Shabbos and Yom Tov, which themselves are a sign. So on Shabbos and Yom Tov, when already I have a covenantal sign, or a sign of the covenantal relationship between myself and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I don't need tefillin. I don't need tefillin in such a situation like that. So we'll say, so fascinating. So again, interestingly enough, Rabbi Akiva agreeing with Rabbi Yosef Lili, just a different drasha. Rabbi Elazar says, good. So we'll say, so therefore, that is our discussion about tefillin on Shabbos and tefillin at night. Now, what I want to point out over here is as follows. So this is, remember, these are two opinions of Rabbi Elazar, of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yosef Lili. What I do just want to point out is there is a whole other discussion about tefillin on Shabbos and at night in Maseches Shabbos. And I will say there are other opinions. There are opinions that say that Shabbos is the man for tefillin, that Laila, we already saw that in Amud Aleph, is the time for tefillin. Here we're offering up a little bit more of a constricted focus on these particular halachas. Rabbi Elazar says, therefore, based on the previous discussion, over ba'aseh. So Rabbi says, so this is very interesting. Now that we've established, especially according to Rabbi Yosef Lili, that pasuk is talking about that tefillin is only put on during the day, not at night. Rabbi Elazar says, if you put on tefillin at night, you are in violation of a positive commandment. Rabbi Yochanan over belav. Rabbi Yochanan says you're actually in violation of a lav. Now, where do you get that from? Lema bid Rabbi Abin. It's interesting because how would Rabbi Yochanan say that you're over on a lav? We just saw what's the pasuk? V'shamarta sachuka hazos miamim lemoada miamim yamima. That sounds a lot like a what? Like an asay. So why would he say that you're in violation of a lav? So watch this. Lema. Rabbi Avin, Rabbi Loi, Kamiflagi. They must be arguing about the following statement: Rabbi Loi, Rabbi Avin. What he said, Rabbi Avin, Rabbi Loi, Kamakum Shneemar, Hishamer, Pen, Vaal, Eno Elalo Sase. Because Rabbi say, interesting enough, Rabbi Avin, Rabbi Loi is of the opinion that whenever you see the lashon of Hishamer, Pen, and Al, those are all expressions, those are all the shonos of lo sases, of prohibitions. And therefore, again, when it says Vishamarta, Vishamarta sachuka azos lamadam yamima. Vishamarta creates a lashon ultimately again of a lo saseh. Demar islay Rabbi Avin, umar leslay Rabbi Avin. Apparently, again, one opinion holds of Rabbi Avin, one doesn't. To which the Gemara says, "Lo tucholi alma islay Rabbi Avin." Everyone agrees with Rabbi Avin. So I'll say, so what's the issue over here? Am Rabbi Loi v'hakim v'hakim iflagi. What's the machlokes? Mar savar hishamer delav lav. Umar hishamer da'asei asei. Umar savar hishamer da'asei nami lav. So I'll say, interestingly enough, everyone agrees with Rabbi Abin, with Rabbi Abin Bar Elai's principle that whenever you see v'shamar, the lashon of shamar, that's a lav. The shaila is it only a lav when phrased inside of a prohibitive statement or even in a positive statement? Okay, so that's the machlokes. So I'll say, so bottom line, there's a machlokes. If you put on tefillin at night, are you in violation of a lav or are you in violation of an aseh? That's a machlokes. But either way, it's clear, you don't do it. You don't do it. So the mitzvah of tefillin, at least according to the opinions mentioned on this daf, hold that there is no mitzvah of tefillin at night, only by day, and by extension, intertwined with that, Shabbos and night go together. Therefore, if there's no mitzvah of Shabbos, no mitzvah of tefillin at night, there's also no mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos. So Amar Rabbi Elazar says, in the Shamran mutter. So we'll say, interestingly enough, if halacha l'maisa, in order to guard the tefillin, you have to put them on at night, you're allowed to do so. So as much as there's no mitzvah of tefillin at night, and not only that, you're not allowed to put on tefillin at night. And if you put on tefillin at night, you're over either on an asay or a lav. If for the safeguarding of the tefillin, you have to put them on. So I'll say an example of this could be you're traveling at night, for whatever the reason, the best way for you to safeguard the tefillin is not to carry them, but to wear them, you could do that. Since you're not putting it on for the sake of the mitzvah, but you're putting it on ultimately, again, to guard the object, that is permitted. Ravina says, so this is very interesting. Ravina says, I was once sitting in front of Rav Ashi, and it got dark. And Rav Ashi put on tefillin. And interesting, Ravina said to Rav Ashi, Rebbe, are you putting on your tefillin in order to safeguard them? In. And Rav Ashi said, yeah, that's why I'm doing it. And I saw that wasn't the really reason he was doing it. In other words, I saw that he was he was yesing me, but that was not the reason he was putting on tefillin. Why was he putting on tefillin? Kasavar halacha. Because he actually felt that the halacha was that you wear tefillin at night. So why didn't he just say that? Because ve'in morin came. Because Rabbi say he understood that although he felt this was the halacha, this was not the appropriate approach for the masses. So therefore, we don't instruct people like this. Why? If you look at Rashi, 4 lines up from the bottom of Rashi, ve'in morin came, shema yishkechem v'yashen bahem. Out of a concern about say, see, here we get to the crux of it. Why is there no mitzvah of tefillin at night? Why? So again, obviously, the pashut answer is because it's a drasha in the pasuk. It's a pasuk. That's why there's no tefillin at night. Because the Torah darshans there's no pasuk. There's no tefillin at night. But on a deeper level, it appears that the reason why there is no mitzvah of tefillin at night is a concern that you're going to come to fall asleep, have a lapse of awareness, not to be attentive enough to the mitzvah, and run into these particular issues. So interestingly enough, Rav Ashi felt the halacha was you wear tefillin at night, but felt that this cannot be disseminated publicly. And therefore, again, when confronted by Ravina, why are you wearing tefillin at night? It must be to safeguard them. Rav Ashi was like, yeah, that's the reason. That's why I'm doing it. Okay, amazing. So I'll just point out something very interesting. If you notice, right, according to Rabbi Yosef Lili, the source for the pasuk that you don't wear tefillin at night is this: Hishamer esachuka zos lemoada miamim yamima. So we'll say, if you notice, by the way, the lashon of Hishamer, of Shamar, is very interesting. One of the earlier times we find this expression is when Yosef tells his dreams to his father, right? So the pasuk says that va'aviv shamar es hadavar. The brothers got all upset at Yosef. Va'ikanu bo'echav. Brothers get all upset. Va'aviv shamar es hadavar. Yaakov hears the dreams, and literally again he kept the matter. So Rashi HaKadosh says something amazing. What does v'shamar mean? Rashi says, Yosef umitzape masai yavo. That Yaakov Avinu literally again was sitting and waiting. When will these dreams come to fruition? That Rashi understands that Yaakov understood that his son, that there was some element of prophetic vision over here. And Yaakov Avinu was just waiting. Yosef umitzape was literally sitting and waiting. When will these dreams come to actualization and fruition? So I'll say, whenever you see the word v'shamar, V'shamar doesn't just mean to guard. V'shamar means to anticipatorily guard, to hold something close and to wait for the actualization of this thing. So perhaps the pshat over here is also, it's interesting then that the pasuk that teaches us that you don't wear tefillin has lashon of a shamar. Perhaps the Torah is also telling us that yes, even when you're not wearing tefillin at night and on Shabbos, but what is the approach of a yid? What is the approach of a yid? To anticipatorily wait. When will I be able to perform this mitzvah? When will I be able to do it? Also, they say about Rabbi Yitzchak Berditchev by the Hasidim, right? I think it's the more common minhag, not just by the Hasidim. You don't wear tefillin on Chalamayid. So the story is told that Rabbi Yitzchak Berditchev was unable to sleep every year on Matzei Simchas Torah. Why couldn't he sleep on Matzei Simchas Torah? He was so eager to put on tefillin the next morning. He hadn't put on tefillin for 9 days, right? From the beginning of Sukkot. He was so excited for the mitzvah that he literally could not sleep. V'shamarta es achuka hazos lemo'ada miyamim yamima. And I will say, so yes, part of this is the eager anticipation for the performance of mitzvahs, but there's another piece. Sometimes in life we are prevented from doing the things we want to do, for whatever the reason, right? There are things I want to accomplish, there are things I want to do. I'm talking now in ruchnius, in spirituality. For I have a vision of what I want to be and who I want to be and what do I want to accomplish, but for whatever the reason, I'm not there yet. Just because you're not there yet doesn't mean that there's not credit for yearning for it. Yearn for it. Yearning is so powerful. Desiring is so powerful. So you want to be a Jew who does X, Y, and Z, but you're not there yet? Okay, yearn for it. V'shamar yosef u'mitzape mosai yavo. Because sometimes yearning for what you want out of life, even if you don't yet have it, is so powerful. Furthermore, a practical thing, if you yearn for it and you consistently yearn for it, at some point, some way, you'll get there. If you don't yearn for it, chances are you'll never get there. The power of yearning, even if we're not able to do, the power of that yearning, again, allows us to come so much closer to the things we want out of life. Incredible. Let's go weiter. Amar Rabbi Barafuna. Sorry. A person is obligated, literally again, to touch his tefillin all the time that he's wearing it. I will say, so again, this is about tefillin awareness. And I will say, I can't actually, this is really important. Tefillin awareness tells us that we are supposed to go ahead and be attentive to the fact that we're wearing the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu on our body. And so therefore again, so Rabbi Barafuna says a person should try to touch their tefillin at all times. Kav v'chomer mitzitz. It's kav v'chomer from the tzitz. The tzitz, remember again, was the golden plate that the Kohen Gadol wore on his forehead. Umatzitz she'im bo ela askara achos. The tzitz, which only has one name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yud Kei Vav Kei on it, and yet the pasuk says, Amra Torah v'haya meschot tamid. The Torah says it shall be on his forehead at all times, which is lashon of attentiveness. So the Gemara says, Shalot tasiyach daita mimenu. Tefillin, sheyesh ba'askaras harbe alachas kama v'kama. Then tefillin, ultimately again, which have many names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all the more so, a person has to maintain a sense of awareness for it. Incredible. So we'll say, so this is important. Again, just something for us to contemplate, to try to figure out how we could maintain the right mindset and the right kavanah when wearing tefillin. Probably at least to try to avoid talking about totally mundane things when we're wearing our tefillin. We'll say there are some who have the practice that when they have to speak about something that is not a davar shebekdusha when wearing tefillin, they'll lift their shorosh off their head a little bit. That a person shouldn't be wearing tefillin, shouldn't be, right? Sometimes you have to talk about something when you have your tefillin on, but it's not a davar shebekdusha. But again, I think an area where we could just think about a little bit, how do we become a little bit more proficient, a little bit better, a little bit more medactic in the things that we discuss, the things that we engage in when wearing our tefillin. So Gemara goes weiter. Turn on Yadcha says your hand. Nebal says great Gemara. So you place your tefillin on your hand. Zu small. Nebal say here we go. Where do you put tefillin on? On your left hand. On your left hand, the Gemara says, Ata Omer Smola Eino Eli. I mean, how do you know that? The pasuk says, all we know is that the pasuk says, V'haya l'cha os al yadcha. It should be an os on your hand. So now the Gemara says, Yadcha means the left hand. How do you know that? Maybe Yadcha means the right hand. Talmud Lomar, listen to this, it's actually very interesting. The Gemara is going to quote a whole bunch of psukim from Shoftim, Tehillim. So watch this. The pasuk V'omer, so the Gemara says, Af yadi yasda aretz v'mini tavcha shamayim. So the pasuk says over here, literally again, my hand, af yadi, my hand has fashioned the earth, v'mini, and my right hand, tavcha shamayim, has solidified the heavens. So what do you notice over here? The Navi uses the lashon of yad and yemini. So yemini means my right hand, which by extension means that what yad means? Yad means my left hand. Fascinating. So the Gemara says, furthermore, Omer, Yada liyase tishalchena v'yimini lahamos amolim. So same idea of Omer, Lama tashiv yadcha v'yimincha mikarev chekecha kala. So I'll say, it's fascinating. From all these psukim, what you see is there's an expression of yad and an expression of yamin. Now, obviously, Yamin means the right hand, which means that by extension, Yad must mean the left hand. Fascinating. Top of Lamed Zayin, 37a. Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Yossi HaChorem Omer. So Rabbi Yossi HaChorem says as follows. Okay, so this is fascinating. What's Chorem? So look at Rashi. Crazy machlokes Rashi tells us. Rashi says, Rabbi Yossi HaChorem, Chotmo Meshuka, Kidamin Bebechoros, Chorum Zeh, Shechotmo Meshuka. So we'll say Chorem means that he had some type of disfigurement. His nose was sunken into his face. So they called him Rabbi Yossi HaChorem. Okay, Tosas comes along. Tosas says, look at right to the left. Rabbi Yossi HaChorem, Perish B'Kontrus, Chod Mahaya Shakol Kein Chorem Bebechoros, V'Tema Hu Lomar Shekinuhu B'Lashon Gnai. So Tosas says that is incredibly awkward that they would call him Rabbi Yossi with the sunken nose. Right? Again, I got it. Maybe they didn't have the same sensitivities in 2026, within the Gemara times of the Gemara. But Lamaisa, to call a guy by his disfigurement seems to be a bit callous, and therefore Tosa says over here, Ela al Shem Makamo Nikrakein. Rather, again, he was known ultimately. Again, Chorom is the name of his place. It's not the name of a disfigurement, but ultimately, again, it's the name of a place. Which then leads to a very interesting question. What's the follow-up question? What's Pshat with Rashi? Right? What's the Pshat with Rashi? Rabosai, the Ribono Shel Olam creates us all in different ways. And the way he created us is exactly the way we need to be. And everybody has something. And so much of life is leaning into the pekel that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given you. Sometimes we look at our quote-unquote liabilities or disabilities or different things, and we look at them as an impediment. And this is something which prevents me from self-actualization or prevents me from living the life that I want to lead. Meanwhile, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it to you, that means by definition, it's an indispensable necessity for who and what you need to be. So Rashi says, if that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu made you, then that's the perfect version of you. There's no embarrassment, right? There's no callousness. There's no lack of sensitivity over here. That's the perfect you because that's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted you to be. Just a fascinating machlokas. Anyway, so the Gemara says, Rabbi Yossi HaChorem Omer, Matzinu Yomi Shnikra Yad. So Rabbi Yossi HaChorem said, here's the problem, right? The whole previous structure was based on the idea that these psukim, they mention Yad and they mention Yemini. So obviously, again, Yemini is going to refer to the right hand. Is going to refer to the right hand, right? Ultimately, again, so if that's the case, then Yad must be a reference, ultimately, again, to left hand. I will say, by the way, also just a little, it's not a complete kiss, but it's more like a divine peck on the cheek. So Rosh Chodesh Adar, Mordechai Atzadik, right? Ishimini, just interestingly enough, right? Okay, there it happens to mean from Shevet Binyamin, and Rosh Chodesh Adar to get a little Megillah allusion, quite beautiful as well. In any event, so Rabbi Yossi HaChorem says, but we find that Yamin is also called Yad Shneimar, Vayar Yosef, Ki Yashis Aviv Yad Yemino. So again, I will say, here you see it. Yad, right? This is when Yaakov Avinu switched his hands by Ephraim and Menashe, thank you. By Ephraim and Menashe, so it says that Yosef saw that he switched around his right hand. So you see that Yad is also called No. The other prince will say Yad Yemino Ikri, Yad Stamalo Ikri. No, that's not a kasha. Because here the pasuk dafka modified Yad. It didn't just say Yad. What did it say? Yad Yemino, right? Yad Yemino. It says his right hand. So okay, when it qualifies Yad, then it could be right hand. But the unqualified understanding of Yad is that it refers to the right and the left hand. Rabbi Nosson says not necessary. Hari Omer, ukshartem, uksaftem. So the pasuk, remember again, there's a juxtaposition on both sides. Torah says, you shall go ahead and you shall bind them on you, uksaftem. And remember again, you shall write them. Now obviously it's referring to two different mitzvahs. One is referring to tefillin, one is referring to mezuzah, but the juxtaposition says as follows. Mak siva biyamin, just as writing is done with the right hand, right? So we'll say, so remember again, us lefties know it is a right-handed man's world, right? So the Gemara makes these blanket obligations that really make us feel, so let's spend a moment on this, really make us feel marginalized, peripheralized, But you know what? It's okay. It's okay. We're strong. So Gemara says as follows: Maksiva biyamin. So just like again, writing is done with the right hand, afkshira biyamin. So too the tying, the binding is done with the right hand. Now, obviously, if the binding of the tefillin, the tying of the tefillin is done on the right hand, then what hand is it done on? It's done on the left. So the Gemara says, "V'chevan dikshira biyamin hanacha b'smali." Obviously, if you're tying, so to speak, the tefillin with the right hand, then you must be tying it onto the left hand. All right, Rabbi Yossi Acharim. So Rabbi Yossi Acharim, hanacha b'smal minalei. So we'll say, where does he learn that tefillin is put on the left hand? Right? Where does he get that from? Nafkele me'acha. Rabbi Nassim. He learns that from the same source of Rabbi Nassim. Ravashi says, Miyadcha. Watch this, Rabbi. Say this perhaps is the most well-known drasha. So Ravashi says we learn it out from the drasha of Yadcha. Rabbi say, now, if you notice something interesting, the way that here the way that the Torah writes the word Yadcha in this context, Vayala os al Yadcha. Yadcha is written Yud Dalit Chaf Hey. Now that is a strange writing of the word because normally you would write Yud Dalid, right? Chaf Sofis or End Chaf, however you want to write. Right? That was right. So, Yud Dalid Chaf Sofis. That's how you write. So what is Yud Dalid Chaf Hey? So the Gemara says, listen to this. So what's this? Listen to this. It's a contraction of two words. Yadcha means Yad Keha. Yad Keha means your weaker hand. Your weaker hand. So where do you put tefillin? Vayal lechos al yadcha, yadcha yad keha, on your weaker hand. What's your weaker hand? So again, the assumption is that most people are right dominant, and therefore again, your left hand is going to be your weaker hand. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Ravashi, ve'ima yadcha shebekoach. I don't know, how do you know that? Maybe yadcha means yad koach. So the Gemara says, Amrlei miksiv b'ches. It doesn't say that, right? If it would have said yad chacha, then fine, that would have been yad koach. But now it says yad cha, yad keha, that's weaker hand. Kitanai, yad cha behei, zu small. So we'll say yad cha behei. There first left hand, achirim omrim, yad cha, this is actually very interesting, l'rabos es hagidein. It comes to include Rabbos as someone with a damaged arm. Now Rashi says over here, l'rabos es hagidein, she'ein lo yad, this comes to include even someone who's an amputee, right? Even someone who's missing an arm or part of his arm. So we'll say this happens to be an interesting discussion in halacha about what happens if someone is an amputee. What do they do about tefillin? So first of all, a lot has to do with what's amputated, because we didn't get into this, and that's actually very important to halacha, that in general, when it comes to tefillin, the most important part when it comes to the placement of tefillin is the placement of the bias. Again, what we saw the ketzitza, that's the most important part. So therefore, again, let's say a person is Rahman al-Islam as an amputee, but let's say again, the arm is amputated, past the elbow, or even above the elbow, but the bicep is there, that allows for the placement of tefillin. I'll tell you where this also comes up in a much less dramatic way. A person breaks their arm. So let's say a person has a cast. So what do you do ultimately, again, regarding let's say I have a cast on my left arm. So here's, interestingly enough, the halacha is, as long as you have the ability to get the bias on, even if you have to put the ritzuos on top of the cast, that's totally fine. Obviously, a person who's a complete amputee and only has one arm, you put the tefillin on the arm that you have, by definition, even though that remaining arm is both your strong arm as well as your weaker arm. So the Gemara says, Tanya idach im lo zroa pater min tefillin. So Raisa says, if you don't have an arm, you are pater from tefillin. Achirim omrim yadcha l'rabos es hagidei. No, the achirim say no. Even yadcha comes to include, even if you're an amputee, halacha l'maisi, you still put on tefillin on the arm that you have. Tan Rabbanan. Okay, iter lefties, finally, right? Our day, right? The lefties, right? Iter maniach tefillin b'yamino shu smalo. So we'll say a lefty puts his tefillin on his right hand, which is the equivalent of everyone else's left hand. So in other words, we'll say now that we have the drasha, that ultimately again yad chasir. I just want to point out there's a very important nafkamina here, because if you notice, by the way, here's what's interesting. Everyone is agreeing that tefillin is put on the left hand, right? But if you notice, they get to it in different ways. From the first drashas, where they darshan that yad means the left hand. So remember again, that's not about strong or weak. They're just understanding yad means left. According to that, it shouldn't make a difference whether you're right-handed or left-handed. Everyone puts tefillin on the left hand. According to the subsequent drasha of Yadcha, Yud Dalid Chaf Hey, Yad Keha, according to that drasha, so understand in those circumstances, halacha lamaisa, it's much more about your weaker hand. Well, if that's the case, then of course that would change between a right-handed person and a left-handed person. So obviously we paskin like the second one, and therefore halacha l'maisa, a left-handed person puts their tefillin on their right hand, which is their weaker hand. Batanya maniach bismolo shmu smolo kol adam. I have a brayso that says that a lefty still puts tefillin on his left hand as well. So the Gemara says, Rabbi, listen to this, Kitanyahi b'sholit b'shtei yadav. So we'll say, where does this come up? Someone is ambidextrous. So we'll say someone who's ambidextrous has the status of a right-handed person. Incredible. So we'll say, I just want to point out, there's a fascinating machlokes over here in halacha. What happens in the event that a person is left dominant with writing, but let's say does other things with their right hands? So we'll say, I will tell you, this is a shaila I had when I was bar mitzvah, because I write with my left hand, but I do a number of other things with my right hand. So I'll tell you, interestingly enough, so when I was bar mitzvah, so my father asked our Rav, and he said, that, like the classic say, you go basar ksiva, everything is dependent on writing. Writing determines your dominant. When I was learning in Eretz Yisrael, I had a Rebbe who said, you should ask a shaila. So I'll just tell you a very quick ma'aser shaya kachaya. I was one Shabbos in Shari Chesed. I was davening in the Grush Shul. So this is when Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and the Magid of Yerushalayim Shalom Shvadron were both alive. So they both davened in the Grush Shul. It's actually pretty incredible. Rav Shlomo Zalman sat to the right of the Aron Kodesh, the Aron Kodesh. The Magid sat on the left. So they used to have it that they would have like a break, not for Kiddush, but just like to learn, right? A break before Ma'ariv on Kabbalah Shabbos, and there was an opportunity you could go up to either of them. So I remember I went over to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and asked him this shaila about tefillin. Right, what should I do? Sorry for this. He said, I can't paskin, I'm not the Rav of the shul. The Magid was the official Rav. The Magid was the official Rav of the Grasha. So I said, just so you understand. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was the posek for Klal Yisrael. He was the recognized, after Rav Moshe, he was recognized, the level of humility. And by the way, it pretty much was like a simple shaila Mishnah Brura. I asked again because I was told to ask again, but just to understand the enormity of that Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach would not paskin the shaila in the presence of the Rav of the Shul, the Magid, who also happened to be his brother-in-law. So then I went over to the Magid afterwards, and he said we paskin like the statement in the Mishnah Brura that we go basar ksiva. That indeed that is the conventional approach. That halacha l'maisa with a person. Obviously, if a person is ambidextrous, really ambidextrous, we treat them like a right-handed person, put tefillin on the left. But if you do different things with different hands, we look at what hand do you write with. That's the hand that determines your tefillin orientation. Incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. Tana the Bei Menashe. Al yadcha zuki bores. So ultimately, al yadcha means where do you place the tefillin? On your bicep. So the Gemara says, Bein einecha zu kad kad, or kad kod. So what says, Bein einecha means your kad kod. What's the kad kod? Heicha and heicha amid berbianai, makom shemocho shal tinok rofes. So we'll say, where do you put tefillin? On the top of the skull. Or we'll say specifically, again, the part of the scalp that's soft. We saw this in yesterday's daf as well. By the way, the displacement of tefillin is very, very important. When we say on the bicep, really what it is like this. It's the actual bias itself that goes on the bicep, which really means that what we call the ma'abarta, right, which is the place of the tool. It's really positioned right above the bicep, so that the bias itself rests on the bicep itself. Again, we're gonna have in Meretz Hashem. I arranged with Rabbi Golian. We're gonna be having a whole presentation for tefillin, for mezuzahs, for all the things that we learned in the sugya Meretz Hashem. Also, opportunity to get your tefillin checked if you'd like. We're going to be doing all of this in Meretz Hashem, so stay tuned for details. But we'll have this demonstration as well, proper placement. So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, listen to this. The Gemara says, if someone has two heads, which head does he put tefillin on? Good shaila. Your right head, your left head, which head? So we'll say, watch this. So Plimo asks this of Rebbe. Amarle, listen to this, this is wild. So Rabbi said to him, Amarle, o kum gali, o kabel alecha shamta. So he said, either get out of the base medrash right now, or accept excommunication upon yourself. Right? Now, by the way, you never ever see this, right? The Gemara is filled with like crazy hypothetical cases, right? And yet we entertain all of these. Apparently, this is like the line. This is good to know, by the way, right? The line you do not cross is two-headed shilas, right? That you do not. So I'll say, so what's the pshat? Apparently, Rebbe thought that, come on. In other words, yes, the Gemara asks exaggerated cases all of the time, right? Exaggerated cases to prove a point. There's just an exaggerated and ridiculous. So no one has two heads, right? Not going to have two heads. Rabbi felt either get out, or just right, or so I said, now watch this. As this whole commotion was going on, the hachi asu gavra. So as this commotion was happening, so a guy walks in the base medrash. Amrlei is yalid li yenuka de isle trei rashi. I just had a baby who Nabach has two heads. Two heads. Kama ba'ina lemesa lekohen. How much money do I owe the Kohen for pidyon haben? So he's right because he was a firstborn child. How much do I owe the Kohen for pidyon haben? So pretty dramatic. So the Gemara says. So first of all, there's so much to unpack in this case over here. So first of all, this idea I will say that this man had this two-headed child, which obviously, again, whatever the medical reality of this, clearly the survivability of this must have been non-existent, but the idea that the father was preoccupied with what do I do halachically with this child, which is the power of a yid, the ability to go ahead and literally maintain a sense of connection, a sense of adherence, and a sense of fidelity to halacha, no matter what was unfolding. Absolutely incredible. So the Gemara goes on. The Gemara says, how much do I owe to the Kohen? Asa hahu saba. So an elder man came along. So we'll say, first of all, interestingly, whenever you see that a Sab, an old man, kind of walks in from nowhere, often that's an allusion to Eliyahu Hanavi. All right, Eliyahu Hanavi said you chayiv to give 10 slime, meaning 5 slime per head. That pidyon haben is based on per head count. Ini is that so vatani Rabbi Barcham mitoch shneemar pado tifta esa bechara adam shomea ani afilu nitraf besok lamed. So we'll say, since the pasuk says that you have to redeem a firstborn child from a Kohen, I would have thought even if chas shalom the child dies within 30 days. Talmud lomar amad days. Talmud lomar ach chalak. Therefore, the pasuk says ach means comes to make a distinction. So I'll say that means only if the child survives past 30 days are you obligated for pidyon haben. Now, what does that have to do with anything? The assumption is that a child that has 2 heads is not going to survive. Is not going to survive, right? So therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, why should there be an obligation of pidyon? Shani hacha the bigolgolas talarachman. It's different because the Torah itself says, when it phrases the obligation for pidyon haben, says chamesh shkalim legolgolas. It literally says 5 slaim per head. So because of that, the way the Torah phrases the obligation of pidyon haben is ultimately, again, per head, and therefore in this case, where the child was born with 2 heads, you'd have to give 5 slaim per head. So we'll say, so pretty incredible. So again, what exactly then happened between Rebbe? What exactly then happened between Rebbe and Plimo is not immediately clear. Did Rebbe allow him to stay, not stay Shamta? I will say, we'll just point out something amazing. We all know that this shaila of which head do you put on tefillin is the most halacha l'maisa shaila that most of us encounter every single day. Because most of us walk around life with 2 heads, right? There's my head of Kedusha, and there's my head that is filled with everything else, the imaginable and the unimaginable, right? And then I want to put on tefillin, and the shaila is, oh my gosh, like which head should I put it on? Now, of course, Rebbe says, get out of here, that's ridiculous. You've only got 1 head. So figure out how to consolidate. Right? At the end of the day, just remember, there's 1 head, and that's that I got to put on tefillin. So make sure that the stuff that's not supposed to be there, make sure that you're actively working to drive it out, because that's the head you're going to be putting tefillin on. So you ask yourself, how can you, right? You kiss your mother with that mouth, right? You know, you're going to put tefillin on that head, and the answer is yes. So I need to do whatever is within my power to make sure that this one and only head is a head that is proper and appropriate and a good resting place, ultimately, again, for those beautiful and holy tefillin. Amar Mar. So we learn Yadcha, Zuki Bores. Ultimately, again, Yadcha. This refers to the bicep. So the Gemara said, Minalan. From where do we know that Yadcha is the bicep? The Tanrabanan, because we learned Al Yadcha Zugova Shebiyad. So we'll say Al Yadcha means this is the highest part of the hand, which ultimately refers to the bicep. So Ata Omer Zugova Shebiyad Eino Ela Yadcha Mamish. Maybe not. Maybe Al Yadcha literally means that you put tefillin on the palm of your hand. Maybe that's what it means. To which the Gemara says, Amra Torah, Hanach tefillin biyad v'niach tefillin barosh. So to which the Gemara says, put tefillin on your hand and put tefillin on your head. So the Gemara says, Ma lahalan b'gova shebarosh. Just like when you put tefillin on your head, you put it on the highest part of your head, right? In other words, it's visible. Afkan begova shebiyad. So too, when you put tefillin on your arm, put tefillin on the highest part of your arm, i.e. the bicep. Rabbi Lazar says, Ein tzarech, you don't need this whole drasha. Hari omer v'haya lecha laos. Tefillin will be for you an os. Lecha laos v'lo lachirim laos. It's for you a sign, and not for anyone else a sign. So we'll say this is incredibly important. Rashi says over here, "V'lo la'achirim la'os shelo yiru hachutza v'bekaf nischaz l'kuliyama." We'll say tefillin have to go on your arm and a part that's really visible to you and not necessarily visible to other people. So we'll say, so since if you put it on your bicep, right, it's closer to your body, it's closer to you, also often covered by your clothing, right? Therefore, halacha l'maisa, that's l'chalos, as opposed to if you wear it on your hand is visible to everyone else. So Rabbi Yitzchak says, so it's interesting if the pasuk says, you shall go ahead and put tefillin on your heart, you shall tie them there, which means that the tefillin has to be next to your heart, which means that by definition, it's got to be on the bicep, opposite the heart. Rabbi Chia, Rav Acha, Rav Avia, Mechavin Umanach Leid Lahadi Liba. So Rabbi Chia, Rav Acha, Rabbi Avia would dafka put their tefillin not only on their bicep, but would put it on their bicep pointed in. Ultimately, again, so this way when it's set, or when their arm was against their body, the actual tefillin itself would be pointed in, pointing towards the heart. Incredible. So we'll say, by the way, this is where it goes right there. Rav Ashi Hava Yosef Kamei Da Meimar. Rav Ashi was sitting in front of Amemar. So we'll say, so again, a lot of interesting halachas that are coming out from here. Number one, it's on the bicep. Number two, ultimately, again, it's pointed in towards the heart. Number three, there's this concept that it should be for you an os, which means, I will say, this is also an idea that we have. We'll talk about this in halacha l'maisa, dafka perhaps a need to also try to cover up the shalyad. That perhaps the shalyat should not be left exposed, but if one is able to pull down their shirt sleeve over it, that should also be, whether or not that's a halacha or that's just a practice. We'll have to stop over here for today. Great, Ron Rabosai. What a way, Baruch Hashem, to close out Shvat, begin Chodesh Adar. Incredible. Another incredible day tomorrow. Shkayach, everyone.